Welcome one and all to the Mudai Manga Book CLub podcast. Today is February 26th, 2025. This is episode 6. Time and money, also known as things I wish I had more of. My name is Louie, and I will be your guide to skipping. I am joined with my co-host.
You know, the truth is that time cannot actually equal money because instant ramen is cheap and cooks quickly, whereas dried beans are also cheap and take forever to cook.
Tom.
Checkmate. Oh, hi. Sorry.
Very nice.
You're welcome.
So for anyone who hasn't listened before, we do 3 topics every week. First one is we talk about things that we've been up to, things we've been reading, things we've been listening to, that kind of thing. And then for this week, we have 2 other main topics. The first is going to be about what's the deal with time skips? What are they about? What do we like?
What's the deal with time skips?
So that's our first topic. And then our second one is we're going to do a review of Peddler in Another World, light novel, volume 1. So for this week, Tom, what have you been up to? What have you been enjoying?
Well, okay, let me take several of these things off of this list.
Okay.
So I've been doing some research for something I want to talk about in an upcoming show. So I ended up getting a bunch of volumes from a few different manga series, one of which was Jujutsu Kaisen. So I read volumes 2 through 6 of that. And that's pretty much all I have to say about it, other than it's fine. It's fine. I mean, it's fine. It's fine.
Taking one for the team?
Unfortunately, Jujutsu Kaisen was the cheap one.
Yeah.
The next one was Chainsaw Man. I didn't even make it through book 2.
Okay.
I didn't even think I made it through 2 chapters of book 2 before I stopped. I'm like, I'm going to come back to this.
As in,
it's
not a fan?
Yeah, body horror isn't usually my thing, and gross out humor isn't usually my thing, and that seems to be a lot of what Chainsaw Man is right now, but it's not awful, and I feel like I should probably read more and see if it gets somewhere, but we'll see. But I haven't finished that, so I'm not going to talk about it anymore. Jujutsu Kaisen 2 to 6. It's fine. It's good. I'm not upset that I got it. I'm not upset that I read it. But I have nothing else to say at the moment.
For the future.
Yes. In addition, especially because in addition to that, I got Eden Zero 2 through 6. And that's real good.
Okay, good. Yeah,
I now have something to get incredibly distracted by now that I'm caught up on all the other series that I've really liked and ended up buying too much of.
Yeah,
so,
well, if you're at 6, you got a ways to go.
Oh, yes. Yeah, there's a lot to go, but I thought the first volume was really good, and it ends on a weird cliffhanger that doesn't make sense.
In volume 6 or volume 1?
No, volume 2. Volume 1.
Volume 2. Oh, okay.
It ends with them 20,000 years in the future finding one of the characters' B cubes, and it says something about Eden Zero. I was like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And then the next chapter just goes on as if nothing happened for a while, but it's very good. It's very entertaining. I think it's a lot of fun. Looking forward to more of that.
Yeah, and just so you know, that's not just some one-off thing. Hey, this is in the future and things happen. It makes, that idea comes up later, so it makes sense.
Yes. Since then, the narrator has been introduced twice, and we have gotten to the part where we first met the narrator in universe.
Okay, yes.
And I won't explain any more than that, but it's really good. It's been a lot of fun. It's been interesting. It's very science fantasy, but it's been an absolutely entertaining series, and I am enjoying it thoroughly. So that's good.
Yeah, glad you like it.
Speaking of enjoying it thoroughly, Mission Yozakura Family, Volume 15.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so I think this is when we finally find out who the next main bad guy is.
I don't remember what happens in Volume 15 specifically.
Without spoiling anything, you find out what their father is trying to do vaguely.
Yeah, okay. I know roughly where you are.
It's a setup volume, because the beginning ended with them fighting against the older brother, Kyoichiro?
Yes. It's like that. Yeah.
And then there's a lot of the setup and learning about what the father was doing, or some of what he was doing. It's a really goofy sort of oh, hey, the thing that was going on has been finished, so we're just going to set things up to come up in the future, but it's still wildly entertaining, which is really good. considering some of my other favorite series we've talked about recently have had setup volumes, and it's been like, well, I finished it, and I'm glad I'm done.
Yeah, that's true.
But this one has done a good job of, at least with this one, the setup volume has been like, okay, this is still really fun while I'm watching them talk about things that are going to happen in 3 or 4 books from now. That was excellent. I'm so glad I'm reading that series. It is very, very good. It's probably not the best in the series I've read so far. It is definitely a setup volume, but it's still fun. Mm-hmm. And what some of the other recent volumes have done, like, it's going to be great. So I'm loving that.
Nice.
Then to do half of the complete opposite, I want you to think of the stupidest story that you've ever read. This is not the stupidest story I've ever read, but it comes close, which is From Desk Job to Death Beams, Volume 1, the light novel. As you can tell from the title, it's very dumb, and it revels in the fact that it's very, very dumb.
Oh, okay. So it's not trying to be a serious story.
It's not trying to be serious. Mm-hmm. And the summary of the story is office worker dies due to freak accident caused by divinity, who then sends him to another world, but gives him 3 phrases to define his new life because he's led a very boring, dull existence that he doesn't really want to live anymore. So he gains 3 new passions.
Okay.
Collection.
All right.
Animal ears.
Okay.
And laser beams.
Oh.
And so when he gets to the new world, which is classic fantasy-esque medieval Adventures Guild
so
type.
Pretty
typical
adventure.
World. Yeah. He also gets given incredible magic beam powers.
Okay.
And his entire life is now just, I really need to keep doing these 3 things. And of course, the animal ears isn't like, he thinks like, oh, I'm going to go see cats. And it's, no, there are people here with cat ears and dog ears and rabbit ears. He's like, I must touch them. And it's very dumb. He's blatantly overpowered. He immediately figures out how to turn his death laser beam into flight and a stick and a giant sword and a cure power and a shield and 1,000 other things. And he just is happy, like, using his ability. And he's just like, I haven't fired beams in almost 9 hours. I got to do something. That's literally part of the story. But it's incredibly stupid. But the characters are fun and entertaining. And it's just turn your brain off and just watch stupid things happen.
That's fine.
Random characters with cat ears be like, cat ears. I'm happy.
And those stories are always fun too. Yeah. So you always need something like that to kind of overdo the really serious ones. Just like
very much so.
Just need don't even have to think.
You get exactly what you expect from a series called From Desk Job to Death Beams. There is nothing being hidden about this series. And then I just finished Peddler in Another World Volume 8, which unfortunately is a Fiat P.
I don't know what that means.
Fuck, it's a 2-parter.
Oh.
I'm so mad. I'm so mad because I just finished it just before the show. And it's like, no, this one was so good. And then I look down and it's like, oh, this is almost over. Oh, crap. This is almost,
It's over.
Really good. Yeah. It's been a lot of fun getting a chance to see some of the new characters. I'm hoping it's going to finally have one of the random tropes that hasn't been in the Isekai series so far entirely with this one, but I'm not going to talk about that because that's a lot of spoilers. But what this one ends up being about is going off and meeting the cat people that you've known about existing throughout the entire series and have never seen. So it's like, oh, we're going to go do that random trope for a while. And it's fun and simple. But we'll talk about this series more later.
Yes.
Wink. Oh, wait, no, I don't have to wink. It's this episode. Never mind.
Yes. Not right now, but soon.
Not quite yet. Well, actually, no, I'm editing it. I can just skip over to that right now.
We're going to the end.
It's perfect. It's a time skip, so we'll just skip over all that.
We haven't talked about time skips yet.
How would we talk about them if we don't have an example?
That's true. We need examples.
And our big topic for today is going to be Peddler in Another World. I Can Go Back to My World Whenever I Want by Hiro Shimotsuki.
Hey. No skipping. Go back.
What? Oh, fine. So what have you been up to?
So for me, I just read Campfire Cooking in Another World with My Absurd Skill, the manga, volume 6 through 10.
Nice.
I think it's up to 10 now. I don't remember if 11's come out yet. It's good. It's more campfire cooking. They made another friend, so there's that. There's more gods now, which are fun. And then they actually made it to the ocean. So it's kind of like, that's, I think, an arc itself almost. Because the goal for a long time was we want to go to the ocean, to go have seafood and stuff like that. And they do that. They meet some other characters along the way. They go to different cities, so you see how dungeons work in the world. You see how different just cultures are. And then they make it to the ocean. They help out there. And then they're kind of just relaxing for a while. And the book ends on you see just a giant dragon fly over. And his friends are like, a dragon! And they chase after it. Because, you know, the dragons have been kind of a thing early on.
Yeah.
Well, in the earlier books. So it's kind of like, okay, you know what they're going to try to do. But the main guy isn't there. They kind of have this place that they're living while they're near the ocean. He's like, where is everybody? And you just see the dragon fly by, and then all of his friends are just chasing after it. So it's good. So I think that's going to start another arc, because by the end of the 10th book, they haven't decided what they're going to do next. They made it to the ocean. They the ocean area had some turmoil, so they kind of cleaned that up. And now it's just like, what do we do now? And that's where the book ends. So it's going forward, it's going to be more of, okay, what else do we want to do now? So it'll be interesting to see what happens next.
Cool.
Next thing was read Destroyer of Worlds. It's the sequel to Lovecraft Country. It's a U.S. author book. I think it came out last year, I think.
Okay.
So Lovecraft Country is set in the 1950s.
All right.
Kind of is about African Americans and how they deal with racism. But then there's also a big supernatural aspect. Thus the Lovecraft Country aspect of it. So there's some Lovecraftian, not so much horror, but Lovecraftian tropes where there's things that you don't understand that are like, they think of it as magic, but it's actually the people who do it think of it as just really advanced science. So it's kind of like weird, magic-y, science-y stuff. And that's what Lovecraft Country is about. The sequel takes place, I think, 2 years later. And it's good, but it's kind of weird. It's like 3 stories for like, there's a father-son story, there's a mother-son story, and then a dad. And then they all have their own stories that kind of cross, and then they all meet up at the end. But it feels like there should have been more to it. It's one of those, that there are 3 stories that could have been bigger. It felt like this was not a full book. It felt like you could have taken the 2 books of Lovecraft Country and the sequel, Destroyer of Worlds, and just made 1 book out of both of them. Because it's not actually that long.
Yeah.
It's fine. It's not... I like the first one better, just because it had more of a singular story that you kind of focused on almost. This one had 3 stories that are kind of all happening in parallel, but it didn't feel like they all worked together, in my opinion. But it's still a cool story.
Okay.
I wasn't expecting a sequel from the original one, so it was kind of like this was added on later.
All right.
And then I just finished Mushoku Tensei Volume 3 of the light novel. That's good. This is the one where they get transported to another part of the world, and it starts their journey in the Demon Kingdom. It's good. It's kind of, you meet a new character who is Ruijard. It's Ruijard? He's the Superdia. He's kind of like a demon race who is feared. Like, everyone is like, just don't even look at him or he'll kill you. But he's actually just a nice guy, and a long time ago, his tribe was kind of manipulated into being the bad guy of the war.
Okay. Yeah.
So the leader of the demon race betrayed them, and he's trying to make life better for just anyone he comes in contact to. But because of his race's reputation, everyone just fears him, assuming he's always doing something bad.
Yeah.
So there's that. And then there's also the introduction of the man god, who is kind of like a all-powerful being. That's the one thing they start to do in this volume, is they start showing you a bigger picture of like how the world became to be. There were, I think, 9 worlds originally. There was 9 or 7, I can't remember exactly how many. Over time, they all got bumped into the human world, so they kind of transferred over. And now everything is the human world, so you have each former world had a god that oversaw them, but then all of them eventually landed in the human world. So all of the races from the other worlds are in the human world now, and the only real god is the man god, but he's kind of an all-powerful being that you don't see, but like the dragon god and like the demon god was a person.
Okay.
So this kind of explains, okay, what's going on in the history and things like that. It's kind of really starting to flow out the overall big picture of how the world works. Mm-hmm. So that's interesting. But the other thing is, at the end of Volume 3, they skip a whole year. And by skipping, I mean they time skip, and that's where the book ends. Which gets us on to our next big topic. So our first topic for tonight is going to be a discussion on time skips. So what I mean by time skips, I want to kind of get out of the way ahead of time. So it's not a simple day skip, week skip. Is not really what I mean, because like, okay, they had a school test this week. A week flies by. Now, I'm talking about big time skips where months, years pass. That's what I mean by a time skip. So a significant amount of time has passed since either the end of the last chapter to the new one, or even inside a chapter where you have a montage or things like that. Something's happening, but we don't want to show it. So the idea is we need to get all the characters to either be better or get older. And the only way to do that is to say, to the future.
Yeah, it's not just that time has passed. It's a significant amount of time has passed, and things have happened during this time, but we're not going to actually show them to you right now, if ever.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that I've seen is you either have a skip where, all right, as I said, a montage where we're going to show you kind of bits and pieces of things that happened along the way. It's like, okay, great. It's now, you've seen roughly what happened, nothing too super exciting, and we're moving on. I've also seen where, this is it. We're done. 10 years later, nothing in there mattered. The only thing you care about is the present then and the present now. What happened in between is just, we'll just keep going. It's kind of one of those things, is how you want to do it really determines how well it goes over.
And I've seen a couple where there's like, okay, we're here now, then jumps 5 or 6 years in the future. And what happened in those 5 or 6 years is really important. A lot of important stuff happened, but we're not going to tell you about it until like 30, 40, 60 chapters from now, because it's important plot event happened, but the person you're looking at didn't see it or doesn't know all the details about it. So we're not going to tell you. That can also happen. It's really just a bunch of time was skipped over. Theoretically, something happened, or just we needed it to be further along in time, and now we pick back up.
Right, and there's a number of reasons why you would want to do this story-wise. Like as I was just talking about, Mushoku Tensei did a time skip at the end of Volume 3, and that is because we just want to go from A to B, and from the map, it's going to take months. So we're just going to say, this is a long way to go. You don't need to see everything. A year later, we're now there. We're just going to skip we just walked through the desert for 6 months, and we'll tell you anything important that happened, but that's about it.
Yep.
Yeah, or there's the one I've seen the most is the training one.
That's a really common one.
Yeah.
Hey, we need to spend a lot of time getting better to fight big bad evil person and stop them from doing big bad evil thing. So we're going to punch this rock over and over again for however many days it takes. And then it just jumps over and it's like, I punched the rock a lot, and now my fists are better.
Yeah, it's the Rocky skip. We're just going to go training montage for who knows how long as we punch rocks, punching bags, and run through the snow and lift weights and all that stuff. It's like, but you don't need to watch every second of all that.
Yeah.
We're just going to skip ahead. So I think I've seen training the most. It's definitely one that comes up the most.
Training's a big one because it's a common thing to happen in a lot of battle series.
True. Yep.
Where there is a time skip like that, where it feels like we are going to skip 2 or 3 years of time and stuff will be a little bit different. None of the other dramatic things will be resolved in any way whatsoever. We're just spending that time making everybody stronger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that sort of sticks out because it's like, what do you mean? Male character B and female character C were like almost about to confess their feelings, and it's been 3 years and literally nothing has changed.
Yeah.
Yep. Nothing's changed.
Yeah. So, as you say there, it's like time skips can maybe not help the story. It's like, okay, in 3 years, nothing happened. Seriously? Mm-hmm. Nothing's changed in that amount of time, which is impossible for the most part. It's like something will have changed in that amount of time. But it's a way, it's like, we're just going to skip and make everyone a little different and go from there.
Yeah.
So then there's the one about the end of so many stories. Like, oh, okay, the big bad guy has been defeated. Peace is restored to the land. Everyone could just take a break. 10 years later, yeah, everyone took a break. Everything's going great. And that's the end. That's how a lot of stories I've read have ended. One of the ones I read a long time ago now, History's Strongest Disciple. In that one, it ends, they defeat the final boss. It's not really the boss, but the final trial. And in that, they kind of just like, okay, great. The world is good now. And then it skips to the very end, and you see he's become accomplished. He wanted to become an author. He becomes an author. And it's just like a way to wrap up the story in a nice, happy, yep, we're good. That's how it ends. Happily ever after.
Yeah, there's another story, that Hard-Boiled Cop and Dolphin.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
There's the big fight with the big bad, and then that ends, and then I don't know how many years it is, but like several years it just jumps into the future for the last chapter, which is just the epilogue, where you get to see for the people who survived and are still around, where did they end up going? What did they become? And you sort of get to see what sort of happened to everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, here we're going to show them all doing things, and you'll see what has happened in those 10 years, and you can just have an ending and just summarize it all short and quickly, but like you get your happy ending post beating the big bad evil guy.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's one of those, okay, I guess it ends stories on a happy note, but it's always like, couldn't we have just ended it earlier and just said everyone lived happily ever after? But then you're also like, okay, so how did everyone live after this was over?
Mm-hmm. There's a pro of it of like you can jump forward and actually show how they're living, and like the things you knew that were going to happen have just happened. It's like, oh, these two people got together. Oh, they had a family. Oh, here's them like as a family doing this. And oh, hey, this person became this person did that. And you can just sort of see them in that and see it's like, yeah, they got that thing they really wanted. Hooray. Mm-hmm. But also, the whole reason we like the story is we wanted to see them get there.
Right.
Like, we don't just want to skip to it. But when it's the end of the story, it's your last chance to sort of tie everything up. Like, it's... maybe. Sure. Maybe. Mm-hmm. Maybe.
The other big thing is, for time skips, you can have it where it's a break in the story. Like, you're not planning to end the story, but it's one of those... Mm-hmm. I've run out of material right now, so I'm going to give everyone a break. But then the story's going to pick back up. Like if you were going to do the Bleach, they have the huge Aizen fight. He is defeated. It's like, okay, that was the bad guy. Great. Time skip. Couple years. Theoretically, you could just stop reading there and just say, okay, everyone's great. Story's over. But then they start another story. They have a whole another half, I think it's quite a bit of story after the Aizen fight, and it's a number of years later, so they do all that. Another time skip, and that's where it ends. So it's one of those, you can use it to branch major story arcs, which can be helpful, but then it also feels like these could just be two separate stories. You don't even need to read the first one to do the second one. Well, they'll introduce everyone again because everyone's now older, so everyone looks different, so it's like, is that the same character? I'm not sure. But it does feel like you can use that to say, this is part 1, this is part 2. And Chainsaw Man did that too, where you could read up to, I forget what volume, and just say, that is Chainsaw Man, and stop there. It's an interesting story. Mm-hmm. And then you can say, okay, a number of years later, this is Chainsaw Man part 2. Same thing with Bleach. So those kind of time skips are good for breaking up major story arcs. but then it feels like you're almost starting over every time.
It can. One thing that I've seen for a couple where they've done it well is... One of the ones that I'm thinking of is the second time skip in Eden, It's an Endless World. There's a time skip fairly late in the series where they jump ahead 3 years. And it feels like part of it was, okay, we've dealt with the people that we've been dealing with right now, and that's resolved. But the really bad guys are still doing something, but they need time to sort of get prepared. So, like, we're jumping ahead in time to when 2 or 3 things that are just going to take actual years of time to get set up and get put into place that the main characters are going to have to deal with. We're just going to skip over that time. We found a spot where we can sort of give them the downtime and let them just be. And then the bad guys can start, like, building the next castle for the heroes to come and blow up. That sort of, yeah, we're losing all this time with the characters that we're following. But it then makes that next story of what they're going off to try and accomplish make sense, because the other side has had this time to just put things into place and set up their plans and get them rolling so that we have something for the characters we are following to work against or find out about or discover or do things to.
Yeah.
That can make it better than just, yeah, we ran out of ideas, so we're just going to take 3 years off and then come back.
Yeah. And one of the other ones I've read, I don't know if you've read it, is Dr. Stone.
I have read the beginning of that, yes.
So that starts off modern, skips to the future. And then as the story goes along, just because of how long things take, it's just like, and it's a year longer, and a year longer. And it's just, there's time slowly progressing as the story goes on. So it's interesting because it's about going modern, Stone Age, and working its way back up. So the time is slowly progressing as the story goes on, and then eventually they go beyond modern by the time the full story completes.
Okay. Yeah. I haven't gotten far enough to really see that. There's still, like, Stone Age, but I was thinking of, like, the beginning. The thing happens, everyone gets turned to stone, and then there's the huge jump in time because, hey, the stone curse thing happened.
Yeah. So in that one, the time skip is the story. You are skipping, I forget, it's like thousands of years between when everyone got frozen to when he wakes up again.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly. I want to say like 10,000 years.
Yeah, I forget exactly.
That feels reasonable, but it's an extraordinarily long period of time. Yeah. Which reminds me of one of my other examples from that, which does a similar sort of thing. The Hero and the Sage Reincarnated and Engaged, I believe is the full title, which has these two hero characters on opposite sides of a war, the hero and the sage from the title, who are going back and forth, like fighting each other during the war, and their countries are at war, and all this is going on. And then the sage dies for mysterious reasons. The hero goes to try to figure out what's going on, and then also dies. And then they get obviously, because the story is called Reincarnated and Engaged, they get reincarnated 1,000 years in the future. Again, that's obviously the point of the story, but there is this large block, I think it's a quarter or a fifth, in the past, them as the hero and the sage. You start meeting them and things like that, and you're mostly following the hero, battle with the sage, and then the sage just dies, and the hero goes to meet them to say goodbye, and is killed along the way, because he goes into the capital city of the opponent by himself, not attacking anyone, just running, because it's like, the person he'd been fighting for his whole life died. He doesn't really have much else to do, and he doesn't really want to win the war. He doesn't want to lose, but he doesn't really want to win and, like, destroy everyone. And it makes no sense that the sage just dies. He goes to find out about her and then dies there, and then just, poof, wakes up 1,000 years in the future. And then there's another mini skip because he's an infant. Yep. So it's like jump to when he's like a reasonable age for the story to continue.
Yeah, you just see him grow up, skipping so many years every time.
And the whole story, again, like you said with Dr. Stone, it's about that and about what happens because of that. So it works really well.
Nice. Yeah, the only one and this might have just been back when I was reading it, but I was kind of disappointed with how the time skip was handled was with Naruto.
Really?
Because in that, there's a time skip like a third of the way in, roughly. The reason I was disappointed in it is because they did the time skips. Like, okay, I'm going to go on this training journey. I'll be back. Great. I'm back. What's happened? I never felt at the time I was reading it that it delved too deep in what happened in the years he was gone. It's like, it's just, I'm here. Great. Let's go. And just go on with the story. And there's new characters. Some stuff has happened, but it never really went deep into it. But maybe it's just because I haven't read it in a while. But it never felt like it really explained or talked about what happened in the 2 years or 3 years. I think it was 3, maybe 2 or 3, that he was gone training, and now he's back. It's like, oh, I'm more powerful, and everyone else is okay. You did your thing, but we're not going to talk about what you did. We're going to talk about what I did, and I did my training, and now I want to get back into the swing of things because I'm the main character.
Yeah. Okay.
But the one I think did the best is One Piece, because in that there's a time skip. I forget exactly when it happens. But I guess it's not over yet, so who knows exactly where this will fall. It's around like 50-ish, volume 50-ish.
Okay.
In that, there's a time skip where everyone is defeated and are sent away. You don't know why at the time, you find out later. But then Luffy says, all right, we're going to all get back together in 2 years. It's like, all right, everyone come back in 2 years. And in that time, you see everyone on the crew come back. They all look older. They all look different. But what they also do is as things progressed, as the story went on, they went back and explained what everyone was doing those 2 years.
Okay.
So you see what Robin was doing for 2 years. You see what Nami was doing for 2 years. You see what Sanji was doing for 2 years. And kind of like, yeah, they had these crazy adventures on their own. While, like, the main character is Luffy, so you see what he was doing for the most part. But it's like, no, I was doing some other crazy stuff. I was training with these crazy, powerful people, or these wizards, or working with the rebellion. And you learn about that as it goes. So it's not like you just say, everyone was training, we're going to keep going. We're going to be like, this is what they were doing because it was important and you should know, because this is why he can do things that he couldn't do before. And why he looks the way he does is because he was here.
Okay. Yeah.
And they didn't introduce new characters that show up right as everyone gets back together. So it's not like we suddenly have a new crew member. It's just, it's the same people. We all know each other. We all look slightly different. But you don't need to know all of it right away, and then we'll just feed it to you as it goes along, because we want to keep going with the main story, but we also don't want to skip what happened with everyone's lives those 2 years that we kind of just aged everybody.
Okay.
But it was just a training arc. It's just a training skip. So it's one of those, you can have cool skips, you can have training skips, you can have ones that fit into the story, ones that are just kind of book-ending stories. I'm not sure which I like the best. I think it really depends on how you use them.
Yeah, there's one that I really like talking and thinking about, because it's to me, this is one of the weirdest ones, even though it kind of does everything that we've already talked about. And it's the first time skip in Eden, It's an Endless World, which happens between chapter 1 and chapter 2. Chapter 1 is this, sets up the world in this research camp, but everybody's died because there's this plague going around killing people all over the world. There's 2 teenagers there and 1 researcher, and the researcher is dying from it. And this plague, like, it doesn't exactly turn you to stone, but it does something similar to that, where ultimately what happens is the outside of your body turns to like stone or rock or some sort of hard material, and the inside of your body liquefies.
Weird.
And when you finish hardening, the inside of your body liquefies and you die. It's called Glacier virus. And so they were here at this base researching it, and they're the only 3 left. The 2 teenagers happen to be immune to it, and the last researcher there, over the course of the first chapter, like, loses control of the last part of his arm he could use, then can't move his neck or his face. At the end of the chapter, all he can move is his eyes, and then he dies. But we see what's going to be, you don't know at the time, but over the course of the series is going to be one of the antagonists, this group called Propator, which is this, like, a mercenary company that ends up becoming incredibly powerful and, like, starts owning countries.
Okay.
And being in charge of parts of the world. Comes in, turns out it's the father of one of the 2 teenagers, and he was infected with the disclosure virus, but it's either slowed down or it's just not progressed far enough to actually hurt him. It's like just destroyed his arm.
Mm-hmm.
A bunch of stuff happens. A lot of people get killed. The 2 teenagers survive. And there was like stuff that was going on with the research where it's like, oh, well, actually this person betrayed people and this person didn't. The 2 teenagers sided with the people who were at the base.
Okay.
But they're all dead, so they bury them. And they're like, okay, well, I guess we'll go see what the rest of the world is like. And then literal smash cut, chapter 1 to chapter 2. It's a character you've never seen before.
Mm-hmm.
You find out in like book 5, it's like 30 years later. The only reason you realize that this had something to do with the first chapter is this combat robot they had at the research plant is with the kid in chapter 2.
So is it more like an epilogue skip then?
No, because this is the beginning of the series. And all the stuff that has happened in those 30 years is like the plot of the first half of this entire series.
Okay.
The 2 teenagers are wildly important characters. The disclosure virus is incredibly important. And it takes until about book 4 or 5 for them to also tell you, oh yeah, the world kind of didn't end. 10 or 12% of the population of the world died. And in certain places, like the entire city was wiped out. And in other places, it was like, some people died, but we're okay. Mm-hmm. But like the world's actually like gone on.
Okay.
The 3 things that have happened is Propator basically controls most of the world now, except for some parts of different continents and where the story is set, which is in South America, parts of Argentina, Chile, south of Brazil, like South Central South America. Mm-hmm. Like there's a lot of areas in there where they don't control, and that's where this is set. And the 2 teenagers from the first thing are wildly important characters. Like everything that comes up has to do with them. And you don't see them until like, you don't hear their names again until like book 6.
Okay. Huh.
And the rest of book 1, book 2, book 3, book 4, you're like, okay. Like it's still a fascinating, like it's still a great adventure. There's still all kinds of crazy action and drama and stuff going on. But you just are like, okay, here's this thing. Anyway, forget all about that for like, I don't know, 6 or 7 months. We're not going to talk about it. We're just going to jump 30 years in the future, talk about somebody completely different, who, as far as you know, has nothing to do with anything we've talked about other than that robot is here. It's a fantastic series, and all of the stuff that has happened with that first chapter, it all comes back. Well, not every detail of it, but like those 2 characters, very important. They'll come back. Why the robot is here with this kid, that will all get explained.
Okay.
And the entire reason why he is here in this place at this time with this robot is eventually all explained.
Yeah.
But you don't get a full explanation for a long time. And it's just like, yep, here you go. And so that entire thing is just sort of like, yeah, we're just going to not talk about it until we feel like talking about it later. And I don't feel like talking about it now. Yeah. But the whole story just goes from there.
Nice.
Like I said, I had that other time skip later where it jumps a couple of years. And it really feels like we're at a point where we could take a break. There's still stuff that obviously hasn't been solved. But it's going to take time.
Yep.
So we're just going to ignore that time.
Okay, yeah.
But it's that first time skip. Because I remember reading it and I'm like, who are you? What's going on? Wait, what? Because you don't get any answers in the first book. Someone starts to mention something that if you're paying attention, you can start to piece together like, oh, okay, this is someone's kid. Okay. Why are they here? And they'll like book 2, like someone will reference one of the 2 teenagers. It's like, okay. I see where you have a connection. All right. In book 3, it's like they'll mention that reference again and specifically not talk about it. And you're like, okay, something bad is going on here. Can you tell me anything more? No. Oh, gee, thanks.
Yeah.
And then eventually it's like, okay, well, now we'll tell you. It is a fantastic series. I absolutely love it, but it's just so weird. Chapter 1. Here's all these important people. Anyway, chapter 2. You won't see any of them for 50 chapters.
New story.
Except for the robot. The robot's cool.
Okay. Yeah, and the only other one I can think of that has some interesting time skipping is Free Ren, where you watch the perspective of someone who exists and time just passes them by. It's like, okay, years are passing and like the main character stays the same. Everyone gets older, everyone passes on, and new people show up, but it's like, okay, but you're trying to capture the passage of time through time skips, but the same character is there, it's just time doesn't work. It works and flows the same way, but it doesn't affect her the same way. So I think that is probably the more interesting time skip ideas for me, is watching someone go through time. Like the training ones have been done to death. There's tons of those. Yeah. Transitioning to new story arcs is always a thing. Like everybody has done that where, oh, okay, my story ends. Oh, my next book takes place 6 months later, or things like that. It's the ones where time is done as this part of the story, not just book ending or trying to skip portions of a story.
Yeah, and Free Ren's a really interesting case because time skips in that a lot of time passes, but it's not something I would normally say is a time skip.
Right.
Especially in that case, because it's done in the same way of like, oh, it's a romance, and oh, the two people are talking to each other as one is getting off the train to go home, and then they leave and they say goodbye, and the train door closes and the train drives away. And then it goes to the next morning.
Yeah.
It treats 10 years the same way other stories treat, like, the day is over and I'm not going to draw them sleeping for 8 hours. But, like, we're also like, wait, that was 10 years. What?
The scale is just so different. And it's like, okay, this is actually new and novel and interesting. It's like, okay, we're skipping time. But as you say, it's just like the next day for her. But everyone around is like, gosh, that was 10 years. Jeez.
Yeah, and it messes with your sense of like, well, is this... Because I'm thinking about it, like, is it really a time skip, or is it really just like... Because then it's like, I feel like every time people go to bed and they wake up the next morning on the next page, like, well, that's a time skip. Yeah, but that sort of doesn't give us a good way to talk about stories, because that's not really what's happening. For Free Ren, that's what it is. Like, yeah, they spent 9 months cleaning up the beach.
Yeah.
We just didn't watch it.
Yeah, you watched them do it a couple of times. They did a little montage of them cleaning up the beach, but like this one chapter spanned 9 months.
Yeah. And it's that sort of massive time sink into it, but still being treated as if it's someone cooking dinner makes it really weird and really interesting.
Yeah, it's not the typical kind of time skip you would think about, but it does skip time quite often.
Yeah.
I think that's the one that, out of all the ones I've read, that probably does it the most, but it also feels the most natural because of the subject.
Yeah. And I would even say, I don't know if you would say this, but I would say it doesn't even feel like time skips at all. Right. Because like a time skip as like a narrative device this is an important amount of time that we're not going to show, or we're going to specifically say we're not going to talk about it because we need a lot of time to pass.
Yeah.
And it's going to be important, but we're not really going to think about it. Whereas the 10 years is very much just like, yeah, it's not important. It doesn't mean anything. Right. It's just we as readers, as humans, look at it and go, wait, that was 10 years. That's a lot of time. And the story's like, what are you talking about? No, it's just time has passed. Just time passed. Time passed. Yeah, it was 10 years. Whatever. Time passed.
A week, 10 years, whatever. That does feel like the odd one out of all the ones we've talked about.
But I think it also makes sense because it's a lot of time. For any other series, that would be like...
It wouldn't be possible.
They'd spend 2 chapters talking about how they're going to skip 10 years. The 10 years would happen, and they'd spend the next 6 books talking about all the stuff that happened in the 10 years, or that's happened because of those 10 years. Whereas this is just like, and?
So yeah, nothing happened. It was boring 10 years.
We got stronger. We did the things that we do. We looked for a flower.
Yeah.
Cleaned up some boats.
Yeah. But I think, for the most part, my favorite kind of time skips are ones where it fits into the story. Like, the ending ones make sense, but it does feel somewhat like you could have just ended it way back at the original. It's one of those weird things. It's like, okay, it's important to have the time skips, and they can make sense, but especially the training ones and things like that, they can be overdone, especially if everyone's doing it. But I like it when it's unique and novel. which is hard to do depending on what kind of story you're doing.
I think the biggest thing from the ones that you've talked about that have been good and the ones that I think have been good is if you're going to do it, it either has to be, yes, clearly nothing important really happened now, but time needed to just physically pass for something to make logical sense. Or, and what's actually really good, is, yes, stuff happened here, but I can't tell you yet.
Right.
But I know what it is, and I'm going to tell you eventually, and it will be cool. But I'm going to just, like, take this section of the book out and just hold on to it for a while.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to start giving you pieces and making it interesting and important. Yeah. And the fact that you didn't see it makes the story more dramatic and more interesting.
Yeah. I think that would be best. It's like, I didn't just say, 2 years, nothing happened. It's just like, no, stuff happened, and I'm going to tell you, but we need to get to the good part first. And then I'll kind of, as you say, spoon feed you. These are some things that happened, so it's not like there's just 2 years of blankness that was passed over. It's like, okay, well, this could have just been a new story then. Does it have to be the same story? It's like, we could just stop there and say, the book's over, we're done.
Yeah.
Knowing that something, while time passed, things were still happening, makes it more enjoyable to read. And so just say, everyone's older just because I say so.
It's a narrative device.
Mm-hmm.
If you use it badly, it's not going to come out well. And like we said, like it can be used really well.
Yes.
And
it's always something to think about of how you're going to explain what happened. No, it's cool. I like them. They're good. They're useful. They have a purpose, but they can't be overdone.
So our big topic for today is Peddler in Another World. I Can Go Back to My World Whenever I Want by Hiroshi Matsuki with illustrations by Takashi Iwasaki. It is published by J Novel Club in English. There's about 9 volumes now. It's the other thing that I've been finding out and I've realized recently and is really nice about it. It's a fairly recent light novel. It started coming out in 2020.
Oh, wow. That is recent.
It started coming out in English in 2022. And book 8, because I read it and I just finished it, came out in August of 2024. So
that's a lot of books since 2020. In 2022.
About 8.
That's like 2 books
8, 9 books in 5. Yeah, that's light novel pace.
I guess so.
There's a reason these books are a very set length, are not super complicated, and come out in the way that they do, because that's how light novels. They're generally 2 to 3 novels a year. Generally, not always.
Yeah, I guess some do come out faster than others.
How a realist hero rebuilt the kingdom. I'm still waiting. Volume 19 is coming.
And then there's some where they never come out.
Well, yeah, there was the huge gap for some of the other ones. Like How a Realist Hero Rebuilt the Kingdom. Book 19 is finally coming out in March. And then it ends in the final. Then there's one more book, and then it's over.
Oh, so it's going to go to 20?
They said it was going to go to 20. In theory, it could end in 19 if, the antagonist wins and just murders everybody. That's a possibility. Because he's trying to murder everybody, so maybe he just succeeds and the book ends. It's like, yep, series is over, everyone's died.
But Peddler in Another World is up to book 8 in English.
9.
9 in English.
It's up to book 9.
Okay.
I have book 9, which is why I'm not screaming in anger that it ended on a cliffhanger.
Ah, okay. So then how many are out in Japan?
9.
Oh, 9 are out in Japan as well.
I believe there's only 9. I don't know. You know what? Let me actually check. Oh, no. It looks like 10 has just come out. October of last year.
Okay. So it's like a few months behind.
It's a few months behind. We don't have the release for the next English one, but 9 came out November of last year in English.
Okay. So it's the typical 3-4 months behind.
No, because the 9th one came out in Japan in February?
Okay.
Maybe I'm misreading something? Oh, yeah, I misread it. The 8th one came out in 2023, not 24.
Oh, okay.
Came out in English in 24, but they're almost completely caught up. They're just one book behind.
Okay.
But even still, this is one that started coming out in the last 3-4 years. It's a pretty new series. The series as a whole, but especially this first one, is a really character-driven story. There's not a big central narrative tying between multiple books until the two-parter. Yeah, I'm going to probably complain about that a lot, because I know exactly what I'm doing as soon as I'm done recording this. I'm sitting down and reading the whole of the next one. But there's not a big overarching plot. There's the characters that you follow along and the things that they do, and the adventures and the things that they get involved in. The other thing about it is the main character, guess what? It's an isekai. Oh, guess what? It's about a Japanese guy who used to work for a company who then quit his job and then discovered a way to go to another world. Oh, but actually he can go back whenever he wants, because that's the title. The main character is very much purpose-built to be the good guy. But at the same time, he's an interesting enough character that who he is and how he does things and how he talks and treats people, he's not just a completely bland person. He's still kind of an everyman, but he's generally a good person.
Okay.
You're following along someone trying to do the right thing in a world that's generally trying to do the right thing, except for the people who are not super good. So you're not going to get anything incredibly dark.
Okay.
Most of the dark things that will happen will either be there's an evil person, or life is hard and people are trying to get by and things were just not going well and they've ended up on opposite sides. So if you're looking for deep moral gray issues, you'll find the barest minimum here, but nothing too strong. And if you're looking for like serious conflicts and things like that, you're just not going to get it. That is not what this story is. This story is the main character figured out how to bring stuff from Japan to a fantasy world and make a lot of money. And he likes money, but he doesn't really want power.
But it's not a comedy, right?
It has a good amount of comedic elements to it, but it's not meant to just be slapstick all the time. No, it's meant to be more of like a lighthearted drama.
Okay.
It does have some sort of emotional heartstring moments. There's different times where for certain characters you get really involved in their lives and what's happened to them, and like it gets very sad because of the things that have happened to them, and they'll become a major plot point in one of the books. But it's never so dark that that's how you're feeling all the time, and it sort of floats around different fairly standard stories, but overall fun, entertaining little things. So as I said, there's a lot of characters in this. So we're just going to sort of talk through them first, because I think that's a better explanation of what the story is like. Like I said, our main character is named Shiro Amada. He was a Japanese office worker salaryman in his mid-20s who left the corporate world. You find out later that he worked for one of not the normal bad Japanese salaryman companies, but the really, really awful ones.
Okay.
To the point that he talks about how he actually sued them and won because they were that bad.
Okay.
And possibly suplexed one of the people because he used to do wrestling in college.
Oh, he suplexed someone.
He suplexed like a boss's. I don't know if that's actually true, but that's sort of like brought up a couple of times. And it's the only like physical thing he can do is wrestling moves.
Interesting.
He only does it like 2 or 3 times in the story. The only time I've actually seen him fight is against someone else who's even more out of shape and physically useless than him. But it's a very funny moment, and he suplexes him 9 times. Yeah, which again should give you a good sense of this story of like it's never gonna get that serious. It's gonna get a little sad, but then like something silly like that will happen. But this has just sort of happened in the last couple months. His grandmother, who disappeared 7 years ago and was finally declared dead because no one has seen her for 7 years, he moves into her old house that they kept.
Okay.
And he finds a mysterious doorway to another world in the closet in the room with her memorial photo.
So it's kind of like a Narnia thing where there's just a door.
Very much so.
Okay.
And also, this is where the story starts. It starts with him staring through the door and like, this is weird. I don't know what this is. Like, there's no build up of like, oh, my grandmother's. Like, no, it's just, there's another world through this doorway. That's weird.
And then they explain it all later. Okay.
Yeah, and he finds a letter from his grandmother. His grandmother basically tells him that this is the portal to another world. Here's what it's called. I'm actually from this other world. I'm sorry, I can't really tell you much about this, but this is what's going on. Anyway, here's this ring and these 2 books. You should probably go to the other world and check it out. And so he puts on the ring, which lets him talk in any language, because of course that has to be a thing. It's an isekai.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He reads the 2 books, which give him 2 skills. Equivalent exchange and inventory. Inventory is a classic. You can put anything in it you want, and it stays there forever and doesn't take up any physical space. Equivalent exchange, he can convert any money into any other kind of money. So he has Japanese yen in his pocket. He activates a skill on it, and it turns into the money of the kingdom that he's in this other world. So he shows up in Niederich and pulls out his Japanese yen and just turns them into copper coins and buys some food. And then he'll get the money in Niederich, the town that he finds right away, and he'll convert it back into Japanese yen, go back to Japan, buy a bunch of crazy stuff, and then bring it back with him.
Oh, cool.
So that's the whole peddler merchant. He can make the money travel back and forth between them by just converting them. That's his other quote-unquote skill.
Gotcha. So does the door always open to the same place?
In the first novel, you don't really see it do anything. It opens up into this forest near the town of Niederich, which is where the entire first book is set.
Okay.
Is that town. He can actually move the door to somewhere else in the other world. He can't move it anywhere in our world / Japan. It's always through that closet door. But in Niederich, if he's somewhere else, away from where the portal used to be, he can move it to a door nearby to go back.
So it's not a physical door in Niederich. It's like a portal.
Not really. It's more like a portal, although he'll often run it through a doorway or a closet or something like that. But he can move the one that's in the other world easily.
Gotcha.
He just can't move it in the Japan world.
Okay.
And the other thing that sort of sums up his character, and again, that sort of purpose-built good guy, is he brings up a saying that his grandmother told him of, do whatever you can to help people in trouble. That was what his grandmother taught him. This grandmother, who was apparently from another world. But when you hear that sentence of do whatever you can to help people in trouble, you know he's going to be that kind of a good guy all the time.
Yeah. He's going to go out of his way to help people.
That's his personality to a T. And money. Okay. And random Japanese stuff, because he's still a Japanese guy.
Okay, yep.
The next character that you meet is called Aina. She's like an 8-year-old girl that is selling flowers. He ends up buying one and then basically pays for her time to show him around town. He decides he's going to become a merchant because obviously he has this equivalent exchange skill. And Aina is this little 8-year-old heterochroma girl, because anime, who lives in this town with her mother, who is sick because plot at the end of book 1, who is working to make money because her mother can't work. And she is honestly probably the other main character. The 8-year-old girl is probably the female lead. Not in a romantic way at all. This is not one of those stories.
Okay.
But she's like in every book and like goes together and basically becomes Shiro's assistant.
Okay.
When his stall starts going really well, he hires her to be his assistant. And then when he gets his own store, he immediately hires her to work there. She's really good at cleaning and organizing and setting out all the products on the shelves, and obviously knows a lot more about this world, but is also just like a kid trying to make enough money to take care of her mother.
Yep.
She's just constantly following him around on the adventures. Then you've got Karen Sankareka, who is the mayor, who seems to be the romantic interest, but nothing happens.
Okay.
Other than they constantly make jokes about that, especially in the first book. It's like, I have something really serious I need to tell you. Aina shouts, is she going to say that she likes you? Shiro goes, do you think she's going to say that she likes me? And she's like, Karen's like, shut up. I'm right here. But she's about the same age, but she's the mayor. Another constantly working to try and take care of the town. Mm-hmm. The town is kind of falling apart in the first book. The guild is failing. The tax revenue is failing. People are leaving. But Karen's doing what she can. She's set up this situation where anyone can come and just open a shop, open a stall on the street or open a shop, pay a little bit of money and just trade there really easily to try and get more merchants and more people to come, get businesses to going, keep the guild running. She's always trying to help. She doesn't have the financial power necessarily to make things happen. Mm-hmm. Oh, hey, we have a person who's about to make a crap ton of money. Solves that side of the problem. But is always trying new ideas and putting things in place to try to take care of Niederich, because it's her great-grandfather's town.
Okay.
And it's this little town in the middle of the nowhere by this giant forest, and that's where this whole thing is. The next couple characters, there's only a couple left really in the first book that are like major characters. Estella, Ina's mother, also has heterochroma, again because anime, and blood relation, who's been bedridden for the last few months, which is why the 8-year-old child is out trying to sell flowers or get jobs or do anything to make money because her mother's basically been sick and dying. We'll come back to that. Then we have the last major characters. We're going to skip over Emile till the end, because that's a thing. We're going to talk about Blue Flash, the adventuring party that Shiro works with. We have Nesca the Mage, who's a half-elf and is constantly sleepy sounding and loves chocolate.
Okay. We
have Kilfa the Cat Sith Ranger, because cat ears, because anime, who's much more energetic and outgoing.
Okay.
Raya the warrior, party leader, normal human, really outgoing and like talkative and like cheerful, like person who's just in charge, but like he's the frontline fighter. And then Rolf the battle priest, who's this quiet but faithful priest who's older than everybody. You don't get the details but find out is from another party. And I love the description of him, which is he is so muscular and so jacked that Shiro is staring at him like, are you sure that outfit is big enough for you? I feel like it's going to explode off of you. He's never drawn like the super jacked guys from like Full Metal Alchemist or all those other series are, where he's just like massive muscle bound guy. But he's described that way in the beginning, and I can't get that thought out of my head.
That is funny.
He's much more quiet, toned down, but I think he's just like, he's not nothing. He walks around with a giant steel mace, and he smacks heads.
And his name is Rolf.
Cool. And then we have Emile. Fuck. Emile is one of those characters who is technically one of the characters on the good guy side.
Okay.
Who you like never actually want to see.
What do you mean?
Because they're annoying and you don't like them. But when they're actually there and they're being annoying, you like them being there annoying so that everyone else can just be annoyed at them. So Emile is this bunny girl who is the acting guild master when you actually meet her, but was just one of the receptionists. Mm-hmm. We'll get to that. Who is entirely focused on making as much money as she can and has no shame whatsoever. Right. The most common running gag is whenever Shiro shows up and is talking about something, she'll just start unbuttoning her shirt and like grabbing onto his hands and is like, "You're gonna marry me, right?" And it's like, shut up, Emile. Nobody likes you. And everyone is constantly like, nobody likes you. But like she keeps showing up and getting involved in everything. So it's like, God, you're so annoying. But you're also really funny.
It's one of those, yeah.
And in this first book, she is actually very important because of what happens. But that's a lot of the characters, and every single one of them shows up in every single book, comes back, or is involved. Every single one of them gets a book where they're important.
Okay. So do the characters know that he's from another world? Or is he kind of keeping it secret?
At this point, no. Nobody is aware of it.
It's just some random traveler?
They just think of him as a foreigner and a very skilled merchant because he has all these crazy items and obviously makes a ton of money. Mm-hmm. But he doesn't tell them. Some of them find out.
Okay.
And some of them They know he's not from around there. A few of them have gone to Japan, but I don't think any of them have ever left his grandmother's house whenever they've gone.
I see.
For some interesting things he pulls off with the fact that he can go to another world. But I don't think any of them... Like, Book 7, Aina might know that Japan exists.
Okay.
And that's probably it.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if he was trying to keep it a secret. Like in some other stories you read, they don't want people to know that they're from another world.
Yeah, he's definitely being cagey with a lot of things. There's a big part of it where he has inventory and he's with the adventuring party and they're talking about like, oh man, if we had an inventory skill, we could do all this cool stuff. And he's like, yeah, that would be cool, wouldn't it? But too bad we don't. Haha. And then they end up really needing it. It's like, okay, actually I have inventory. I can like do this for you. Like, oh, nice.
And I was like, why didn't you say this earlier?
No, it's like, good on you for not saying that, because like that's a really powerful skill. And he sort of like makes it sound like it's his bag or something. He's smart enough to not lay all his cards out.
Okay.
He doesn't always negotiate well. Sometimes he fails in negotiations. Karen actually tricks him into revealing that he has inventory. She says like, you have some kind of special skill to carry all this stuff with you. Yeah, I have the inventory skill. I was like, aha, it was weird how you had all this stuff.
Yeah.
Wait, you didn't know I had inventory skill? No, I was just guessing and just saying stuff out loud. And then you just told me. Got you.
Now I know.
Yep.
Okay.
So he's not trying to necessarily hide. He's not making sure no one ever knows, but he's not stupid. He's being cautious with things.
Okay.
But that's sort of like the cast. There's a bunch of other side characters and several of them do come up later, but that's sort of everybody that's involved.
Neat.
And so the story begins. He goes to this other world. He's wandering around the forest. He finds out he can turn money from one to the other because it's a Japanese light novel. Again, he buys meat skewers, tastes them. Wow, they're really bland. There's no seasoning on this.
Yeah, because what else would you eat?
What else would you eat? And also, what else would you do but complain about the food? And then, over the next several books, build an entire new food culture.
Yeah.
That's going to come up, but not in this book, so we can skip over it.
Always about food.
So he meets Aina. He ends up looking around. He ends up opening a little... It's not really a stand or something. He just gets a spot on the main walkway and just lays out a blanket.
Okay, yep.
And I think it was like 5 coppers, so it's like 500 yens. It's about $5. But what he decides to sell is matches.
Ah, yes.
And there's this big ploy where like he goes there the first day, and some adventuring dude, this warrior who's this really outgoing person. Because that's another thing this first book does really well is Nesca, Kilfa, Raya, Emil,
Rolf.
I don't know about Rolf. I can't remember for sure. But all of those other ones for sure, you see them in the background. Or you see them doing something before you've met them and you know they're there.
But they haven't met the character.
Yeah, at that point in the story, you haven't actually met them. Like,
gotcha.
His first customer is Raya. But you don't find out that that's who it is until, like, halfway through the book. And he's like, oh, it's you. I remember you. You're the first one who bought the matches. I remember you. That was a good deal. So he sets them, like, he does this big demonstration. Everyone's like, oh, this is so cool. Like, how much is this? This is probably like, because he's got like little boxes of like 100 and big boxes of like 800. And he shows off how matches work and like this kind of crazy magical technology and this weird paper box that's probably handcrafted. That's probably like 50 coppers to like 2 or 3 silver. And silver is about $100.
Okay.
Yep. I want to say like $100. It's exact in the book. I just can't remember it off my head. And he's like, well, you're wrong. A regular box is 10 coppers and a large box is 50 coppers. Like, super cheap.
Yeah.
And immediately sells out in like 45 minutes. Sells out of everything. And he's like, okay, all right, I'll come back tomorrow. I'll bring more. Goes to like a bunch of grocery stores in Japan.
Buys
like pallets of matches.
Yeah.
Discovers he can use the inventory skill in Japan after he walks out with a shopping cart full of matches.
Oh, really?
Because the cashier's like, oh, wow, that's a lot of matches. Like, yeah, it's a lot of matches. Then he goes out and is like, I wonder if my inventory skill... Yeah, his inventory skill still works in Japan.
Okay, well, that's good.
Yep, so he can use his skills in both worlds. Brings them all back. Next day, sells out in 2 hours. And then this is when Karen comes and is like, hi... I don't want to bother you. but you're kind of completely oversaturating the market here. I'm just going to give you an old house and you can just have it. And so he gets this house that he can use to run a store. And this is when you meet Karen and you learn about her policies and what's going on in the town and trying to help things. And it's like, look, I feel bad like kicking you out of your spot because you paid for it for 5 days. Normally I would charge you for this house. I'm kicking you out, so I'm not going to charge you. And he's like, no, I'll pay for it anyway. No, I'm not going to let you pay for it. And that's sort of how he gets his shop. Okay. And that will be his shop for the rest of the series, or his first shop for the rest of the series. It's this nice little 2-story house, shop on the first floor, some living room upstairs. He hires Aina. He gives her her pay at the end of the second day. Okay. And she doesn't look at it until she gets home and then apparently faints because it's like 10 silvers. Because that's the other thing. He makes 600,000 yen or like $6,000 on the first day.
From selling the matches.
Because he sold them like the small ones for like 5 coppers, which is like 500 yen. But they cost like 120.
Yeah, so he made huge profits.
2.5 to 3 times profit margin here, which is crazy. So the second day, he makes like 1.2 million yen in pure profit.
How many people are buying matches?
Well, there's an adventurers guild in town. These are something that don't exist. All that exists is flint and steel and these really complicated magical devices. Okay. Which are way more expensive. And they're cheap. 5 coppers isn't nothing. True. But they're matches. They'll last for a while. So if you buy like 5 boxes of small boxes of matches, it'll still last you a few months and it'll cost you, a nice dinner. But you'll be able to start your fire, start your stove, start anything for the next 4 months easily. That's at least sort of what's going on. And adventurers who are going out and doing all sorts of stuff, they're buying them for all sorts of things. And you also find out other people are buying them and going to other towns to resell them for even more. 3 to 5 times more than that. Yeah. And he's like, yeah, whatever. I don't care.
Because they're going to still have to come back to me.
A, they have to come back to him to get more. And B, he made like 1.2 million yen in like 2 hours. He's talking about like, if I did this for 365 days, I would never have to work again. Yeah. He's making so much money. He's like, I'm good. I think I'm good.
So does he sell things besides matches?
So now that he's got a store, he's going to start selling other things. And this is where Blue Fash, the adventuring party, comes in. He decides to talk to Karen to get some advice about hiring the Adventurers Guild. She reluctantly agrees to help him because things are a problem there. Emil came to her and asked to borrow 10 gold for the guild, which is obviously a crazy amount of money. That's like, it was like $100,000. It's like 10 gold. She has to borrow that from the mayor, who obviously can't do that because she doesn't have that much money. So this is when the next sort of main arc of the story comes in. Shiro goes to the guild, talks to Emil. Emil is weird, talks shit about everybody. Turns out the actual guild master and the other receptionist, who the two were having an affair with each other, took all the money out of the guild's coffers and fled. So the guild has no money. So now adventurers are leaving because they can't get paid.
For doing quests and things. Okay.
And the only way that Emil has been able to pay them is to literally go into their monster loot and just give people loot as reward.
Okay. Instead of money.
So they have no loot either because they have nothing, which is why she has to borrow the money. Karen turned her down, but she was like, hey, can I just hire a part of adventurers to go on an escort mission where I can just be with them? And this is where he meets Blue Flash. He spends time with them. Mm-hmm. Hey, what's it like being an adventurer?
Oh, okay.
Oh, the food's really bad. Hey, here's this thing called instant ramen and instant soup. Oh, man, it is really cold. If only there was something like a Mylar emergency blanket that you could take out that would keep you super warm and is incredibly lightweight. And then they get attacked by murder grizzlies.
Of course.
Because that's a thing. They're just out there in the middle of the night and just suddenly a giant bear shows up. Everyone gets up and they're like, if we fight this, we're going to die. And this is when you learn everybody is a good person. Okay. Because Shiro's like, oh shit, they're just going to leave me to die and run away. And Raya's like, okay, Ralph, it's been good working with you. Nesca, Kilfa, take the merchant, get the hell out of here. We'll hold him off as long as we can, and we're probably dead, so goodbye.
Ah, okay.
Also, I love you, Nesca.
Of course.
And they're about to run away, and then Kilfa's like, wait, no, we don't have to run away. What? Why? Oh, because there's another murder grizzly on the other side of us. Oh, great.
So we're dead.
So anyways. We're all gonna die.
Yeah.
And that's the end of the series.
And that's over. Yeah.
Everyone's dead.
I take it that's actually what happens.
No, so bear attacks are a thing in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things that you have is anti-bear spray. So Shiro, one of the items he brought along, super mace for like protecting against bears, sprays both of the bears in the face, and mace in your eyes, even for bears, not pleasant.
Yep.
So that takes them out, and they're like, okay, we can run. And the party's like, run? We can kill them.
Oh, no.
So they kill the both of them, both of the bears. They pull all the different parts off of it. This is when Shiro reveals that he has inventory, takes all their stuff, packs it up for them, so they can then keep adventuring and going through, and he can keep showing off all this stuff. And then they go back, and of course when they get back, this is when you find out why the guild needed that 10 gold. Because the former guildmaster borrowed 10 gold from their loot merchant, who comes by every once in a while and buys up all of the like crazy stuff they found. Because this forest is full of monsters. It's not all S-rank stuff, but like there's moderate stuff. There's herbs, there's things to find. There are like different tiers of monsters, and some of it's really valuable.
Okay, yep.
The guild has no money. So it's like, fine, I'll just take the loot that you have in repayment. It's like, there's no loot because we had to pay the adventurers and we had nothing.
So there's nothing.
So there's nothing, and this loot merchant is like going apoplectic.
Yeah.
And so Shiro comes in and is like, hey, we killed a murder grizzly. So because there was 2 and Shiro saved them with his spray, they're like, okay, you saved our lives. We would all be dead. You get one of them, we'll take the other one.
Okay, yep.
I have murder grizzly, hide, meat, teeth, claws. And the loot merchant was like, what? How much do you want for that? 10 gold? 12 gold? He's like, I'm selling it to the guild. You can buy it from the guild.
Yeah.
So he sells it to the guild. The guild sells it to the merchant, pays off all their debt. Blue Flash sells the other one, sells it to the guild. He sells it to the merchant. They both make the merchant has to pay a lot for that. I think it's like 18 guild for all the ones from the second one.
Okay, yep.
But he's still like, holy crap, I got 2 murder grizzlies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So he's over the moon. The guild is financially saved until it turns out that some of the other guilds out there in the world were thinking about coming and moving to Niederich for some reason, possibly because the guild was dying. And they're going to come and buy it. And so they've just saved the guild, and now someone's coming here to buy it. And it turns out the first people to show up are the Maze Marauders, considered to be the worst adventurers guild in the continent.
So there are multiple guilds then?
Yes, there are multiple guilds. They spend some time on this that exist. You can go between them, but it's sort of like a small company. Mm-hmm. Each one exists around, and they have multiple branches and things like that.
Okay.
But you're not required to only ever stay in one.
Okay.
And in this town, there was only ever one called the Silver Moon. It was a one-off guild, but it still works under the same principles.
Okay.
But there are other bigger ones that are in multiple cities, multiple kingdoms.
Gotcha.
And one of them is the Maze Marauders. They show up, insult everybody, tell them that they're going to all work for them. And also this merchant guy who has the matches, yeah, like you're going to sell them to us and we're going to take 40% of your profits and you're going to like it. And Shiro basically tells him to fuck off in a slightly nicer way. Yeah. He may also suplex this man. I can't remember.
I should just
This is not the person he suplexes 9 times. I wouldn't, because he usually doesn't, because he's a scrawny guy.
Okay.
But this might be one of the people he does that. He may at least punch him in the face or something like that. And then because he also insults other members of the Blue Flash, like Raya beats the crap out of him, Rolf beats the crap out of him. He basically tells everyone that they're all going to be under the control of the Maze Marauders, and they basically kick him out of the town.
Okay then.
And hey, surprise, turns out there was 2 guilds coming, and the other one is the Fairy Promise, I believe is what it's called.
Okay.
One of the best guilds also shows up and basically has the complete opposite attitude of, hey, we want to buy this guild and we want to hire Emil and we want to hire all the adventurers because we need adventurers. The building already exists. We'll pay for it. Oh, you're that merchant? I've seen all this stuff in your store. That's crazy. Can you please open up a branch shop inside the guild? Just anything, because your stuff is crazy good. We want you to stay. Also, it turns out in the forest, the ancient magical kingdom, we have a map of hundreds of ruins that exist in that forest. So we're going to start bringing a bunch of our adventurers here. So, like, what can we do to make you like us? Hooray, everything's solved.
Okay, so they're going to use the forest as, because they found more places to go, they're going to bring in people from other places to make it a better place. Okay, yeah. That makes sense.
They are it's the Fairy's Blessing. That's the name. The Fairy's Blessing is the name of the guild. They are both the biggest and also considered one of the best.
Oh, okay.
Maze Marauders, I think, was like the second largest, but is also like one of the worst.
Okay.
To like work for.
Gotcha.
So it's like, hey, everything's great again.
Then no.
And then this gets into the final mini arc of the story, which is Aina admits that she needs to borrow money because she needs to get medicine for her mom because her mom has been bedridden for months.
Okay.
With something called the decaying disease. And Shiro talks with her for a while, and Karen, the mayor, and Rolf, the priest, and Raya, the warrior, like through different means just happen to also be there when this is happening. And they all sit and talk with her and offer to help her and her mother and get involved in the next sort of couple scenes coming up. But you also find out Aina's father died several years ago. She and her mother used to live in a completely different part of the world.
Okay.
And then while she was 4, her mother like packed up her daughter and moved to Niederich because where they used to live was in the middle of a war zone. So they've gotten here. They know nobody. They have nowhere to go. And then her mother got the decaying disease and has basically been bedridden for the last several months. Aina's been cooking, cleaning, and working to try and take care of her. And it turns out the decaying disease is beriberi, or a thiamine deficiency.
Okay,
So everyone's like, oh God, there's nothing we can do. We don't even know what causes it. And Shiro's like, hang on a minute. This seems weirdly familiar. Can I talk to you about this? I know what this is. I know. Don't freak out. I think I can cure your mother. What? You can cure her?
Yeah, of course she's going to freak out.
Yeah. It's a much... Obviously, I'm just explaining this quickly because I want to sort of tell the story, but this is another, like, really good moment of the story of this comes together, but it's like, yeah, where I come from, we know what this is. We know what causes it. Shiro goes back, gets a vitamin container, comes back, gives it to her, and it's like, here you go. Take this every morning, every evening, and you'll just be cured. And everyone's like, what? What?
That is all
you
it
can't
takes.
Cure the decaying disease. Like, you know, you can.
Yeah.
It's the way certain things are. Just
eat better.
Like, my uncle had this. Yeah. He couldn't move his legs, but he still recovered from it. You will recover from this. Oh, but this is going to be some super crazy medicine. You're sick. You're the mother of the girl who is my shop assistant. I don't want to make money from something that keeps people from dying. Like, call back to an earlier thing. My grandmother used to say, do whatever you can to help people in trouble. Yeah. And you're in trouble and I'm going to help you. So just take this. Then there's a 1 month time skip. Call back to another part of the episode. There's a 1 month time skip. Stella, Aina's mother. Wow, she's cured. It's been a month and she can finally start standing again and start walking again. Yeah. That is almost the end.
Okay.
The very end. Shiro is out behind the house drinking beer, and Karen shows up and they start drinking beer together. And Karen's like, thank you for everything you've done for the town. You've done so much. And Shiro's like, I mean, I didn't really do that much. I've seen how much money you make. I've seen how many crazy things you did. You saved the guild twice, helped kill 2 murder grizzlies, saved someone's mother, and brought a ton of money into this town. Shut up. You've done a lot of good for this town. But he ends up talking about his grandmother, because Shiro obviously knows that his grandmother knew about this place. She was from here, but she disappeared several years ago. I've got to quote this because it is the two dumb name things that are good about this. His grandmother was Arisugawa Mio. And Karen's like, wait, Alice Gawamio? The immortal witch? You're the grandson of the immortal witch? Like, that can't possibly be true. The immortal witch who has the amazing sword of Mel Gibson? Because Japanese novel, so they obviously can't use the real person's name of her grandmother's favorite actor was Mel Gibson. So named her sword after the fake version Mel Gibson.
Of course, yeah.
And the novel ends with him just standing up and screaming, "What the hell? Grandma's been alive the whole time?" End of book 1.
Yeah, because in the beginning of the book, Grandma's considered dead, right?
Dead. Yeah. Yes. She's technically only been missing for 7 years, but she was in her 80s. She was an old woman.
So everyone assumes that she got lost or passed away.
Yeah, it's no one has seen her for 7 years, presumed dead. But no, it turns out she's the immortal witch from this other world.
Well, she did say she was from the other world, so yeah.
She did say that, but she did not say that she was the immortal witch.
Yeah, I believe some kind of surprise.
And I will say this just because I do think it is fun to say this. There is a battle at one point in which Alice the Immortal Witch uses the ultimate sword Mel Gibson in a battle. That is a thing that happens.
That is funny.
Chekhov's gun does get fired.
So you like it?
Yeah. I think the first volume does a really good job of opening it. There's not a long-running thread for this whole first book. It's a bunch of short little adventurers. But each time, a couple new characters join in, and they all get involved in the next part of it. And then a couple new characters show up, and they all get involved in the next part of it. And each little event, up until the last one with Stella being sick with the decaying disease, which doesn't really follow from anything, but was hinted at earlier on in the story, everything just sort of like transitions nice and easily from one to the next to the next. And even that last one, Aina's obviously been a constant of the story from the beginning, and she's been doing all this stuff, and there's been a bunch of scenes that we've skipped over where Shiro gets mistaken for Aina's father.
Okay.
While like Aina's like half asleep, and she's like, "Oh, Papa, you're back." Shiro's like, "Yeah, go back to sleep. Good night." Like, "I'm so happy, Papa." But like all this family stuff with her like keeps coming up and then just sort of disappearing. And then at the end, the big thing with Stella. But for a story about him just bringing stuff from Japan and solving all of the problems, it's very simple, logical solutions. Hey, this is the stuff that we have nowadays that can solve these problems that were huge problems. The decaying disease, beriberi, thiamine disorder, especially for Japan, was a massive problem. If you go on the Wikipedia and look about it, there's like an entire section just about all the events and things that happened in Japan with this.
I didn't know that.
So all the events with the Japanese army where people were dying from just eating rice, the nutritional deficiency that was causing it was beriberi. And so there's all these things involved in that. It had been a thing in Japan for a long time, and it happened to a lot of people, so it sort of makes sense. Hey, what would be the disease that happens? In the same way, like, if you were setting something in England, you might talk about Black Death or the Plague, or I forget where Typhoid Mary was from, but like if you set something in that area, you would talk about typhoid.
Okay, yep.
Everything sort of fits, and it's like, oh yes, Japan, modern Japan would obviously be able to solve this, but it's not solved with rocket guns or death lasers. It's solved with anti-bear spray.
Yeah, something simple.
Well, not even necessarily simple, but the kind of thing that, especially in Japan, you would just be like, well, of course you'd have bear spray. That's just a thing that we have for people who are in the mountains. Like, it just exists. Oh, of course we would know about what to do about beriberi because, like, it's a big thing that's happened in Japan. Some of them, like, to me, it's sort of like, bear spray? That seems weird. Oh, but they explain it a little bit. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Like, we used to do camping. There was all sorts of things that you could get for dealing with wild animals. We don't have a lot of bears or other large predators in our area, but in places where they do, those sorts of things exist. Although we're Americans, so most of them is just a shotgun rather than like bear spray. But
hey, whatever works.
Yeah, it's just sort of like fun and entertaining. Nice. And now that we have all these characters, every book sort of brings them back and gets a new adventure.
Okay. Yeah, so the first one's always the setup. We have to learn what this world is about. And now that they've done that, they can start really fleshing out what's going on.
Yeah, and I just think the way that this one was done with all these short little adventures, you never feel like you're getting exposition dumped to. You never feel like you're getting told everything that's going to go on. It's just, we're going to go on this mini adventure, and this is what we're going to solve. But as we're solving it, we're going to learn about these things that exist.
Okay, yeah. Instead of just reciting a big list of, here's the world and here's everything about it.
By the way, adventurers exist, and they go from the stages of stone rank to gold rank. Like, thank you for joining the Adventurers Guild. Let me have the 7 paragraphs explaining all the different things that work in Adventurers Guild. That's the same every time. No, spend, like, this time listening to this bunny girl who's alternating between swearing up and down at anyone who's ever wronged her and desperately trying to make sexual advances on Shiro, who definitely does not want her to. For like 30 pages. It's going to go on for a lot longer, but it's going to actually be funny and weird and enjoyable and like a story instead of just telling you what's happened.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds good. You said there's 8 or 9 out in English for light novels.
Yeah, there are 10 total. 9 of them are in English. The 10th one, they haven't announced a release date yet, but the 9th one came out in November, so probably like 3 or 4 more months.
And I just looked it up, and there are 5 volumes of a manga version so far in English.
Yes. And it looks like it's actually drawn... Yep, it's drawn by the person who did the illustrations. And the illustrations are actually really good. Again, very character-focused. There's a lot of panels of Aina smiling, Aina crying, someone else smiling, someone else being upset. There's not action scenes. The thing with the bear is probably the closest one of them, and it's a giant bear, 45-degree slash cut, Shiro holding up a can pointing into the thing, and like, that's it. That's the most action-y shot of the series. But it's good. It's really pretty cute art.
Nice. Yeah, sounds good. I will definitely check it out.
And with that, that will be the end of the episode for today. So thank you very much, everyone, for listening. If you'd like to reach out to us, you can find us on Blue Sky at Mudai Manga Book Club or on YouTube at Mudai Manga Book Club. If you'd like to write something longer or reach out to us another way, you can also reach us at mudaimangabookclub@gmail.com. For those of you listening on YouTube, please do the classic YouTubes of like, subscribe, comment if you have something you want to say, because we would love to hear it. All that stuff really does help people find the content that we're making, find the things that we're making, and get it out there. And it just lets us know that people out there are listening and at least tolerate us. I'll accept tolerating.
Tolerating's a good start.
If you are watching on YouTube and you don't want the YouTube ads, you want to get away from that, and you just want an audio-only version, we have the podcast, which you can find on Podbean and a number of other podcast locations. We're working on getting it everywhere. Apple does not want to let me make an account for this, but I'm getting there.
Slowly
almost there. And any of those places, feel free to leave a rating, leave any messages or any things you want to send us, because we'd love to hear from you. And with that, Louie, do you have any other recommendations for this week?
Yeah, so it's something I've read a while ago, and I don't know if we'll ever cover this kind of stuff on this podcast, is an American graphic novel. It's called Chew, Chew, and it's...
Okay.
Think of it as the world is very focused on food, and people have food-related powers. And it's a detective story where you have the 2 cops go around solving murders. And one cop is just a regular person. And the main character, if he bites a piece of food, he sees its history. So if he bites a cow, like a hamburger, he will know how that hamburger got there. Like where the cow was, what happened to the cow, what happened to the meat, what happened to everything. And that's just the burger. And then he bites the bread, understands everything that happened from the wheat to all that. So he goes around solving murders by taking little bites of things to look into the past.
Okay.
So because of that, he only eats beets from a can because there's nothing happening to the beets. So he just eats beets unless he's trying to solve a murder. And then you have other people who have other crazy food-related powers, and it's like, it goes ridiculous. And at some point, there's a fighting chicken who becomes a superhero, and it's over the top. It's called Chew. It came out a number of years ago.
So I found it. It came out in June 2009, and there were 60 issues ending in November 2016 with another one shot.
So there's 12 volumes that you can get. I've seen them in Barnes & Noble. They're not as easy to find because they're not a popular story anymore. Because it's a little on the older side now. But it's done by Image. It's hilarious. It's really funny. It's a very American story. Yeah.
Yeah.
It goes off the rails sometimes. And
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely an interesting idea.
It's pretty cool. What about you? Anything you would recommend to check out that we may not normally talk about?
So I was struggling to think of something, and I ended up just settling on recommending not quite a board game, but it's a social deduction game called Blood on the Clock Tower. If you've ever played Mafia or Werewolf, this is that sort of a game. The two big differences because I remember we played Mafia when we were kids, and a lot of people played Werewolf. The video game version, Town of Salem, if you played that, it's a similar game to that. The difference is twofold. One, everyone is a character who has some kind of special power. They're not always good. Some of them are actually like bad power, but like everyone is unique, has some sort of ability or thing that affects the game, from being able to tell who's evil or good to being protected from the demon, which is the werewolf or the mafia boss of the game who like kills people in the night, to being able to make people have to act like other characters or cause their information to work wrong, or if the demon gets killed early in the game, you become the demon instead so the game can keep going.
Oh, weird.
And all that. So everyone has like some kind of power, and some of them get ridiculous. But the early ones are simple and they're really well balanced. But the other thing is, just because your character is dead does not mean that you're out of the game.
Oh, that's good.
Even if you're dead, you can still talk to everyone, you can still participate, and you get one more vote. One more time before the end of the game, you can still vote to execute someone.
Interesting.
So usually you save it until the very end, but even though you've died, you still have your information. You can still talk to other people, try to get information, try to solve the game, try to work with people to figure out what's going on. It just works really well as a social deduction game. It's been around for about 6-8 years. Not a super long time, but it's been around for a while. There's a bunch of people who play it on YouTube and do games of it. The really famous ones were done by the British board gaming channel No Rolls Barred.
Okay, yep.
They've done a bunch of games online. They've done 2 seasons of like these big production in-person games. But there's also the Blood on the Clock Tower YouTube channel. There's a bunch of other people who just do YouTube videos of this game. It's a lot of fun. I've only gotten to actually play it a few times, but if you like that sort of interpersonal social deduction game, it is really good, and you don't necessarily have to go out and find a place to play it. There's a lot of people who play it online.
Oh, that's cool.
Although there are more and more people who play it in person too.
Nice.
Little more time investment needed than just playing Mafia.
Okay.
But as a game that you could play regularly, much better game. It's a lot of fun. It's worth checking out. There's a lot of great games of it online that you can watch from the storyteller's perspective, where you can watch the players try to figure it out, or from different players where you just get to follow them as they talk to people and try to figure out what's going on.
Nice.
Really good game.
Cool. Yeah, I'd never heard of it.
As for that, next week we will be talking about
Jujutsu Kaisen Fearsome Womb arc. So this covers volume 1, 2, and part of 3. So chapters 1 to 18. So we're going to cover that arc, talk about it, talk about our feelings, talk about what we think about it, talk about what we think about Jujutsu Kaisen just in general. That will be next week's episode.
Sounds good. It's going to be
interesting.
Fun.
It's going to be interesting.
I certainly haven't given away any of my feelings so far today. It'll be good. I think it'll be good to talk about. And, you know, it's a popular series. It's an important series. So let's talk about it. But with that, we will see you all next time.
All right. Bye.
Peace. Try to not get super distracted to ramble for an hour and a half with the main topic. I'm going to fail miserably, but I'm going to try. Yeah, I heard you. I can hear you. I don't know what's wrong with your ears.
Wow, yeah, they're broken.
Oh, okay. That must make recording this really hard. I'm amazed you're able to stop yourself.
I'm just talking randomly.
Oh, okay.
The editing is what makes it sound amazing.
Yeah, I was expecting you to just be like, 7. Oh no, we've time skipped too far. We've gotten past the end of the episode.
Take it back. Skip backwards.
Go backwards. No, you've gone too far.